Welcome back to Midnight Whispers. Don't forget to subscribe, turn off the lights, and let's step into something you can't unhear. My son told me the doll walks at night, and he said it the same way a child would say the sky is blue. He was not crying or scared when he said it, and that scared me more than panic ever could. The doll had been in our house for years, and it was soft and worn and harmless looking. It sat on a small chair in the corner of his room, where it always had. He said it only moved when the lights were off and when I was gone. I smiled and told him toys cannot walk, and he nodded like he already knew I would say that. That night, I watched him fall asleep while the doll stayed perfectly still. I waited longer than I needed to be sure, and nothing happened. I went to bed telling myself, kids create stories to explain fear. The next morning, he asked me why I stayed awake so long. I asked how he knew, and he said the doll listens. He said it knows when people pretend to sleep. I laughed, but my hands were shaking when I poured coffee. He told me the doll stands closer every night. I checked the room and noticed the chair had been moved slightly. I told myself houses shift and children bump things. That night, I set up a small camera facing the bed. I told myself it was for reassurance, not fear. I watched the screen while my son slept peacefully. Hours passed, and I almost relaxed. Then the camera flickered for less than a second. When the image returned, the doll was no longer on the chair. It was standing next to the bed, facing him. I felt my stomach drop and my ears ring. I could see its stitched face pointed directly at my child. It did not move on camera at all. It was simply there like it had always been. I ran into the room and turned on the light. The doll was back on the chair, exactly where it belonged. My son was still asleep and breathing slowly. I checked the camera again, and the footage showed what I saw. I did not sleep that night, and neither did my thoughts. I told myself it was a glitch or stress or exhaustion. The next day, my son said the doll was confused. He said it did not expect to be interrupted. I asked what he meant, and he said it waits until he dreams. I installed a second camera without telling anyone. That night, I watched both screens at once. When he fell asleep, the room changed again. The doll appeared closer than before, with its head tilted slightly downward. I noticed its arms were positioned differently, like it had adjusted itself. I screamed and ran, and when I returned, it was gone again. My son woke up and asked why I scared it. I removed the doll from his room immediately. I locked it in the garage, inside a sealed box. I told my son it was gone forever. He looked sad instead of relieved. He said it would find its way back. I did not believe him until the garage camera activated on its own. The box was still sealed, but the doll was standing outside of it. I felt something break inside my chest that night. I did not tell anyone what I saw, because saying it out loud felt dangerous. The doll stood in the garage, like it had always belonged there. The box was still locked and untouched, which made no sense. I carried it out of the house before sunrise and buried it in the backyard. The ground was hard, and my hands were shaking the entire time. My son watched from the window without saying a word. That night, he slept better than he had in weeks. I stayed awake, watching every camera feed. Nothing happened for hours, and I started to breathe again. At exactly 3:12, the camera in his room distorted briefly. When it cleared, the doll was not visible, but something felt wrong. My son started breathing differently, like he was dreaming deeply. He began speaking quietly and calmly. He said, "Thank you for waiting so patiently." My blood ran cold because no one was there. I ran into the room and turned on the light. He was asleep and smiling softly. I asked him in the morning who he was talking to. He said the doll does not need a body anymore. He said it learned how to move without one. I dug up the spot where I buried it and found nothing. The hole was empty and clean like it had never been there. That night, I removed every toy from the house. I moved his bed into my room and locked his door behind us. He slept facing me and not the wall. He told me it does not like when it cannot see faces. I did not ask how he knew. I stopped using the cameras for one night, thinking ignorance might help. It did not. At 3:12, I felt something change in the air. My son sat up suddenly and waved at nothing. He said it was proud of him. I packed bags and left the house before sunrise. We stayed at my sister's place across town. She did not believe me until my son asked where the chair was. He described her guest room perfectly, even though he had never been there. He said it was deciding where to stand next. I watched him sleep every night after that. I noticed he always waited before closing his eyes, like he was listening. He never slept right away anymore. He waited until the room felt quiet enough. Doctors said it was imagination and stress. They said children create companions to feel safe. Therapists said to ignore it and reinforce reality. I nodded and smiled and lied through every session. At home, my son stopped mentioning the doll directly. He spoke in careful sentences, like someone was listening. He asked permission to sleep every night. He thanked the air before closing his eyes. I noticed marks on the carpet, like pressure had been applied in one spot. I vacuumed them away and pretended not to notice. We moved again to a smaller apartment with no old furniture. I bought new beds and new clothes, and nothing from before came with us. The first week was quiet and almost peaceful. I let myself believe it was over. Then my son started having dreams where he could not move. He said someone waited beside him patiently. He said it liked when people did not fight sleep. I set up cameras again, even though I hated them. Nothing appeared on screen, but the sound picked up breathing that was not ours. I muted it and cried silently. My son woke up and told me not to worry. He said it cannot stay long anymore. He said it only visits when he lets it. I asked why he would ever let it. He said it helped him feel less alone when I was tired. That broke me in ways I cannot explain. I quit my job to stay home with him. I never left him alone, even for a minute. He stopped smiling as much as before. He became quiet and observant and older somehow. He said it was teaching him patience. I burned every drawing he made because they all showed the same figure. He told me fire does not hurt it. He said it only changes how it looks. I stopped sleeping completely for weeks. I would watch him breathe and count every rise of his chest. I noticed that when I stayed awake, nothing happened. When I nodded off, even briefly, something always changed. The air felt heavier, and the room felt occupied. I realized then it was waiting for me too. One night, exhaustion won, and I fell asleep sitting up. When I woke, the room felt different. My son was awake and looking past me. He smiled gently like he was reassuring someone. He said it was okay now. He said it understood the rules. I asked what rules, and he said it only comes when invited. I asked who invited it, and he said sleep does. I felt sick, realizing how simple that sounded. I moved his bed closer to mine and held his hand every night. He stopped thanking the air after that. He said it respected boundaries. I did not feel relieved by that statement. Time passed, and things seemed normal on the surface. He went back to school and laughed again. He stopped talking about it completely. I thought maybe it had finally gone. Then I noticed he never sleeps without a light. He never turns his back to open space. He never closes his eyes without checking the room first. Once I asked if he remembered the doll. He said yes, but it does not look like that anymore. He said it grows with you. I asked if it still comes. He said only sometimes, when he dreams deeply. He said it does not need permission anymore. He said it learned patience from waiting. I threw away every camera after that. Some proof is worse than ignorance. I stopped looking for answers. I stopped asking questions. I focused on keeping him awake when he needed to be and letting him sleep when he felt safe. He told me safety feels different now. He said it is quieter when it watches. I hate that word watches. I hate how calm he sounds saying it. I hate how part of me believes him. Years have passed, and my son is older now. He barely remembers the details, but he remembers the feeling. He says it felt calm and careful and never rushed. He says that is why it was scary. He says bad things are loud and obvious. He says patient things last longer. I moved cities and changed everything about our lives. He sleeps alone now and says he is fine. I still sit outside his door, sometimes listening. I still keep a light on in the hallway. I still feel like something notices when I sleep. I dream less than I used to. I wake up feeling like time passed without me. I find myself thanking the silence, sometimes, without realizing it. My son once asked why I never nap. He smiled when he asked, and I did not like that smile. He said some things learn from us, whether we want them to or not. I believe that now. I believe children notice patterns adults ignore. I believe sleep is not always rest. I believe some things wait because waiting works. I never bought another doll. I never allowed toys with faces. I never let rooms stay completely dark. I never assume calm means safe. I tell this story because it is true. I tell it because pretending it did not happen almost broke me. I tell it because someone else might hear their child say the same thing. I want them to listen. I want them to believe. I want them to stay awake. This story does not end with screams or blood. It ends with understanding, and that is worse. It ends with the knowledge that some things do not chase. They wait, they learn, they adapt. They do not need fear to survive. They need routine. They need sleep. They need moments when defenses lower naturally. My son sleeps fine most nights now. He dreams like any other child, but sometimes he wakes up smiling at nothing, and sometimes he says it still checks in. I never correct him anymore. I never deny his experience. I sit with it and accept that some truths cannot be removed once known. I still have the first recording saved somewhere hidden. I never watch it again. I already know what it shows. It shows that something waited patiently for a child to sleep, and that sometimes is all it takes.